they said humanity was soft. Born on a gentle world with mild weather, weak gravity, and abundant resources. The Galactic Council's xenobiologists classified Earth as a nursery planet, too comfortable to breed true warriors, too peaceful to forge real strength. When Earth's first diplomatic vessel arrived at the Council chambers, requesting membership among the stellar civilizations, the delegates didn't just refuse. They laughed. The Zephyrian ambassador, whose people had conquered 17 star systems through sheer brutality, nearly fell from his hover throne in amusement. The crystalline Vorthari chimed like breaking glass, their version of hysterical laughter. Even the normally stoic Drachmari allowed their facial tentacles to writhe in what passed for mirth among their kind. "These softskins think they belong among us," wheezed the Zephyrian, his 4 lungs struggling to contain his amusement. "Look at them. No claws, no armor plating, no poison glands. They can't even survive in a proper atmosphere without their little breathing masks." The human ambassador, Sarah Chen, stood quietly in her environmental suit as the laughter echoed through the vast chamber. Behind her visor, her eyes were calm, patient. She had expected this. Humanity had prepared for this. What the Council didn't know, what they couldn't possibly understand, was that Earth's gentleness had been an illusion. A brief, precious moment of peace between storms that had forged something far more dangerous than claws or poison. They had laughed at Earth's delegation. By dawn, they would learn why that was a mistake. The laughter still rang in Sarah Chen's ears as she walked through the corridors of the Council station. Her footsteps echoed softly against the metal floor, a sound almost lost among the hissing of alien atmospheres and the mechanical breathing of various life support systems. The station was a marvel of engineering, built to accommodate dozens of different species, each with their own environmental needs. Gravity zones shifted subtly as she moved between sections, and the air itself changed color as different atmospheric mixtures swirled behind transparent barriers. She had just endured 3 hours of humiliation in the Council chambers. 3 hours of being treated like a child presenting a crayon drawing to adults. The 47-member species of the Galactic Council had listened to Earth's petition for membership with barely concealed amusement, and, when the formal rejection came, it was delivered with such condescending politeness that Sarah almost preferred outright hostility. "The Council appreciates Earth's enthusiasm," the Zephyrian ambassador had said, his translucent skin shimmering with what Sarah's briefings had identified as smugness. "However, membership in this body requires certain qualifications. Military strength. Territorial holdings. Proof of evolutionary superiority. Perhaps when your species has matured sufficiently, you might reapply in, say, 1,000 years?" The chamber had erupted in that alien symphony of laughter again. The Vorthari's crystalline chiming, the Drachmari's subsonic rumbles, the wet slapping sounds that passed for mirth among the aquatic Nephilim. Even species that had barely achieved interstellar travel themselves had joined in, eager to have someone to look down upon. Sarah found herself in the station's observation deck, a vast transparent dome that offered a panoramic view of the surrounding space. 3 gas giants dominated the view, their swirling atmospheres painted in shades of amber and crimson by the system's binary stars. Ships moved between them like glowing insects, cargo haulers and military vessels going about their business with practiced efficiency. She wasn't alone. Admiral Jackson Torres stood at the viewing wall, his hands clasped behind his back, still wearing his dress uniform despite the day's proceedings. His weathered face reflected the starlight, giving him an almost spectral appearance. Behind him, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked at a portable terminal, her fingers dancing across holographic displays with mechanical precision. "Well?" Torres asked without turning around. "How bad was it?" "About as expected," Sarah replied, joining him at the window. She pulled off her environmental suit's helmet, shaking out her black hair. The station's artificial atmosphere was perfectly breathable for humans, one of the few courtesies the Council had extended. "They're not just refusing our application. They're treating us like a joke." "Good," Dr. Vasquez said from her terminal. "Let them underestimate us. Makes our job easier." Torres finally turned to look at Sarah, his pale blue eyes studying her face. "Any change in the timeline?" Sarah activated her wrist communicator, pulling up the recording she'd made during the session. The Zephyrian ambassador's voice filled the observation deck, speaking in the Council's common tongue. The humans are a young species from a remarkably docile world. Their planet's lack of significant predators, natural disasters, or resource scarcity has left them soft and unprepared for the realities of galactic civilization. We see no evidence of the warrior spirit necessary for Council membership. Soft, Torres repeated, his voice carrying a bitter edge. They think we're soft. They've never studied our history properly, Dr. Vasquez said, looking up from her work. They're xenobiologists focused on our current peaceful period. They completely ignored everything that came before. Sarah pulled up another file on her communicator, displaying Earth's recent timeline. They know we've had no major wars for the past 60 years. They know our crime rates are at historic lows. They know our planet is currently experiencing unprecedented global cooperation. She paused, scrolling to older data. What they don't know is what it took to get there. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Earth's current peaceful state was precisely what had disqualified them in the Council's eyes, but that peace had only been achieved through decades of the most brutal, devastating conflicts in human history. The resource wars of the 2040s, the AI crisis of 2055, the genetic purges that had followed, each had pushed humanity to the brink of extinction and forced them to adapt, to become something harder and more resilient than their gentle planet had originally shaped them to be. They looked at our delegation and saw weakness, Torres continued. Environmental suits instead of natural armor. Diplomatic protocols instead of territorial displays. They have no idea what's underneath. Dr. Vasquez's terminal chimed softly, and she smiled, a cold expression that transformed her normally kind face into something predatory. Phase 1 just completed successfully. All surveillance networks in this system are now under our control. Already? Sarah moved to look over the doctor's shoulder. The display showed a complex web of data streams, each representing a different monitoring station, communication relay, or sensor array throughout the system. Green indicators showed successful infiltration, and every single one was green. Human computer viruses have advantages the Council never anticipated, Dr. Vasquez explained. Most galactic species developed their technology along different evolutionary paths. The Zephyrians use bioneural networks that think in linear patterns. The Vorthari employ crystalline matrices that process information in harmonic frequencies. The Drachmari rely on quantum entanglement systems that prioritize security over adaptability. She gestured to the display, where streams of data flowed like liquid light. But humans? We learned to fight dirty in cyberspace. Our viruses don't just attack systems, they adapt to them. They learn. They evolve. Every firewall they encounter makes them smarter. Torres moved to join them at the terminal. Status on the fleet? 47 ships now in position, Dr. Vasquez reported. Each one cloaked using technology the Council assured us was impossible to develop. They're so certain that stealth systems can't work in vacuum that their sensors aren't even calibrated to look for them. Sarah felt a cold satisfaction settle in her chest. The Council's arrogance had been their weakness from the beginning. They had dismissed human technology as primitive, human tactics as naive, human potential as limited. They had no idea that Earth's diplomatic mission was just the opening move in a much larger game. What about their military response capabilities? She asked. Dr. Vasquez pulled up another display, this one showing the defensive positions throughout the system. Massive battleships hung in space like steel mountains, their weapons systems powered down in the casual confidence of absolute superiority. They have enough firepower to glass a planet, but it's all designed for conventional warfare. Ship-to-ship combat, orbital bombardments, the kind of tactics that worked when wars were fought by species too primitive for real innovation. They've been fighting the same way for thousands of years, Torres added. Line up your biggest guns and shoot until something dies. No subtlety, no adaptation, no psychological warfare. They win through overwhelming force applied in the most direct way possible. It was exactly what Earth's strategists had hoped for. Humanity had spent centuries learning that the greatest victories came not from matching an enemy's strength, but from making that strength irrelevant. Every major human conflict had been decided by innovation, adaptation, and the willingness to fight by new rules when the old ones favored the enemy.
Timeline confirmation? Sarah asked.
6 hours, Dr. Vasquez replied.
Dawn comes to this station at 0600 local time.
By then, every major military and communication hub in this system will be under our control. The Council will wake up to find their entire power structure has been quietly dismantled while they slept. Torres walked back to the viewing window, watching as alien ships continued their peaceful patrols, unaware that human vessels moved unseen through the darkness around them.
They laughed at us today, he said quietly.
Called us soft.
Unworthy. Told us to come back in 1,000 years when we'd grown up.
Sarah joined him again, looking out at the gas giants and their swirling storms.
Somewhere out there, human ships were moving into final positions.
Soldiers who had trained in Earth's most brutal environments were preparing for operations the Council couldn't even imagine. Scientists who had survived humanity's darkest experiments were putting finishing touches on weapons that exploited weaknesses in alien physiology that the Council didn't even know they had.
They're about to learn something important about humans, she said. We don't just get mad when someone insults us. We get even.
Dr. Vasquez's terminal chimed again, and, when she looked at the display, her smile widened.
All teams report ready. Operation Sunrise is a go. The observation deck fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems.
Outside, the station continued its slow rotation, carrying them steadily toward the dawn that would change everything. In 6 hours, the Council would discover that Earth's apparent weakness had been carefully cultivated camouflage, and that humanity's true nature was something far more dangerous than fangs or claws. They had laughed at Earth's diplomatic overture. Soon, they would understand why that laughter had been premature. The first sign of trouble came at 0347 local time, when the Drachmarinite Watch commander noticed that his sensor readings weren't updating properly. The quantum entanglement arrays that formed the backbone of the system's early warning network were functioning perfectly, but the data they transmitted seemed somehow stale.
Like looking at a photograph instead of a live feed.
Commander Vethkaran had been monitoring galactic space lanes for over 2 centuries, and his experience told him that even the smallest anomalies could indicate massive problems. His tentacles writhed with unease as he ran diagnostics on his equipment, finding nothing wrong with the hardware even as his instincts screamed that something was terribly amiss. What he didn't know was that his sensors were working exactly as designed. They were simply showing him what Dr. Vasquez's infiltration programs wanted him to see, a perfect loop of normal activity recorded from the previous night, seamlessly replacing the real-time data that would have shown him 47 human ships moving into attack positions. Across the system, similar scenes were playing out on hundreds of monitoring stations. The Zephyrian orbital defense grid was displaying normal patrol routes while human strike teams approached their command nodes. Vorthari communication hubs were reporting standard traffic while their crystalline networks were quietly subverted by adaptive algorithms that had learned to think in harmonic frequencies.
Nephilim deep space sensors were tracking routine commercial vessels while cloaked human ships slipped past their detection arrays like ghosts. The beauty of it was in the subtlety.
This wasn't a massive cyber attack that would trigger immediate alarms and defensive responses. Instead, it was death by 1,000 tiny cuts, each system compromised so gradually that no single failure would seem significant enough to warrant emergency protocols. Captain Maria Santos crouched in the maintenance shaft of Defense Platform 7, listening to the alien voices on the other side of the access panel. Her tactical suit's translation system rendered the Zephyrian conversation into crisp English, and what she heard made her smile grimly.
The humans were pathetic today, one of the guards was saying. Did you see their ambassador's face when the Council rejected them?
I thought she might start crying.
Soft skins always do, his partner replied. No spine, no fire. It's what happens when a species evolves on an easy world. They never learn to fight for anything.
Santos touched the explosive charges attached to her belt, each one precisely calibrated to disable specific systems without causing casualties. Humanity had learned many hard lessons about the costs of unnecessary death, and those lessons had made them far more effective warriors than any species that relied on brute force alone. She waited until the guards had moved to the far end of their patrol route, then carefully removed the access panel. The defense platform's primary control room was exactly as the intelligence reports had described, a semicircular chamber filled with holographic displays and control interfaces designed for Zephyrian physiology. The aliens' four-armed configuration required a completely different control layout than human systems, but Santos had trained for months to operate in environments like this. Moving with practiced stealth, she attached her devices to key system nodes. Not enough to shut down the platform immediately, but enough to ensure that when the time came, its weapons would target the coordinates she chose rather than the ones its operators intended. The Zephyrians would think they were firing at human ships, when in reality they would be providing cover for the next phase of the operation. Similar infiltrations were taking place throughout the system. Lieutenant Chen Wei was inside the Vorthery communications hub, his hands dancing across crystalline control surfaces as he introduced subtle modifications to their harmonic encryption protocols. Sergeant Anna Kowalski was in the depths of a Drakmari battleship, planting nanodevices that would create cascading quantum failures in their primary weapons systems. Corporal James Mitchell was aboard the Council station itself, moving through ventilation shafts toward the central power distribution center. Each operative was a specialist, trained for years in the specific alien technologies they were tasked to compromise. But, more than that, each was a survivor of Earth's most brutal conflicts, shaped by experiences that no peaceful species could understand. They moved through enemy territory with the quiet confidence of predators who had learned to hunt in the dark. Back in the observation deck, Dr. Vasquez monitored the progress of her digital army. Her screen showed dozens of parallel infiltrations, each virus adapting and evolving as it encountered new defensive measures. The alien cybersecurity was sophisticated but rigid, designed by species that thought in predictable patterns. Human malware was chaotic, creative, and utterly ruthless in its pursuit of system access. Status report, Admiral Torres requested, his voice barely above a whisper. 93% of primary targets compromised, Dr. Vasquez replied. Communication networks are under our control, defense grids are responding to our commands, and their early warning systems are showing them exactly what we want them to see. Any signs they're catching on? Negative. The beauty of gradual infiltration is that each individual system failure looks like routine maintenance issues or equipment aging. They're not designed to recognize coordinated attacks that happen slowly over several hours. Sarah Chen stood at the viewing window, watching the distant lights of alien ships as they continued their patrols. Each vessel represented centuries of technological development, generations of military tradition, and the combined might of species that had conquered entire star systems. In a few hours, all of that power would be turned against itself. I keep thinking about what the Zephyrian ambassador said, she murmured. About us being soft because we evolved on an easy world. Torres moved to stand beside her. What about it? He was half right. Earth was gentle to us, for a while. But gentleness isn't weakness, it's a luxury that only the strong can afford. She gestured toward the stars beyond the gas giants. Out there, species fight for survival from the moment they develop consciousness. They build their entire civilizations around conflict because that's all they know. But humans? We chose peace. We worked for it. We built it from the ashes of wars so terrible that they nearly destroyed us. And that makes us stronger, Torres agreed. They fight because they have to. We fight because we choose to. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her screens, her expression thoughtful. There's something else they don't understand. They see our environmental suits and think we're fragile. They don't realize that adaptability is a strength, not a weakness. We can survive in their environments with technology, but they can't survive in ours without it either. The difference is, we know how to use tools. We know how to adapt. A new alert appeared on her displays, and her smile returned. Phase 2 complete. All primary military assets are now responding to our control protocols. When their commanders give orders to attack our positions, their ships will fire on coordinates we select. Time to dawn? Sarah asked. 2 hours, 17 minutes.
The observation deck fell silent again as the three humans contemplated what was about to unfold. Outside, the Council's mighty fleet continued its patrols, unaware that they were now dancing to humanity's tune. Soldiers slept in their barracks, confident in their species' superiority. Politicians dreamed of maintaining their power structure, never imagining that it was already being dismantled around them. In 2 hours, the artificial dawn would come to the Council station, and, with it would come the revelation that humanity's apparent weakness had been the most sophisticated deception in galactic history. The Council had laughed at Earth's diplomatic mission, dismissing it as the naive attempt of a primitive species to join their exclusive club. They had never considered the possibility that the diplomacy itself was a weapon. "You know what the real irony is?" Sarah said as she watched a Drakmari dreadnought glide past in the distance. "They were right to be suspicious of us. Just not for the reasons they thought." "How so?" Torres asked. "They rejected us because they thought we were too peaceful to be dangerous. But peace isn't the absence of violence, it's violence perfectly controlled. And humans have spent centuries learning to control violence with a precision that no other species has ever achieved." Dr. Vasquez's screens flickered as the final infiltration protocols completed their work. Across the system, every major military installation, communication hub, and defense platform was now operating under hidden human control. The Council's own weapons would soon be turned against them, but not to destroy, to demonstrate that destruction was no longer their choice to make. "Final phase initiating," Dr. Vasquez announced. "All systems green. Operation Sunrise is now in terminal countdown." Outside the observation deck, the first hints of artificial dawn were beginning to touch the station's hull. The binary stars were rising over the curve of the nearest gas giant, painting the cosmic landscape in shades of gold and crimson. It was beautiful, peaceful, and completely deceptive. In 97 minutes, the Council would discover that the soft, weak humans they had dismissed with such amusement were actually the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever seen. Dawn came to the Council station at exactly 0600 local time, as the binary stars cleared the horizon of the largest gas giant and cast their golden light across the observation deck where Sarah Chen stood waiting. She had not slept, none of them had, but she felt no fatigue. Only the cold, patient satisfaction of a plan coming to perfect fruition. The first indication of change came not as alarms or explosions, but as silence. Across the system, the constant chatter of military communications simply stopped. The background hum of routine transmissions, status updates, and patrol reports that had filled the electromagnetic spectrum for centuries vanished as if someone had thrown a switch. In the Council chambers, Ambassador Vethkaren was the first to notice something wrong. The quantum entanglement array that should have been feeding him real-time data from his defense platforms was showing nothing but static. He reached for his emergency communicator, only to find that it too had gone silent. "What is the meaning of this?" The Zephyrian ambassador's voice echoed through the chamber as he discovered that his own communication systems were equally dead. "Where are my fleet reports?" Similar scenes were playing out across the station as delegates from 47 different species found themselves cut off from their military forces. The Vorthary's crystalline communication matrices had gone dark. The Nephilim's bioneural networks showed only blank displays. Even species that relied on primitive radio signals found nothing but empty frequencies. It was then that the station's main display screens activated, showing an image that made every delegate freeze in shock. Sarah Chen stood in what was clearly the Council station's central command center, no longer wearing her environmental suit. Behind her, human technicians worked at control stations that should have been completely inaccessible to any non-Council species. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Council," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through every speaker in the chamber. "I hope you slept well. We've been rather busy during the night." The Zephyrian ambassador rose from his hover throne, his translucent skin flushing with rage. "This is impossible. How did you access our secured areas? Where are the guards?" Sarah smiled, and there was nothing diplomatic about the expression. "Your guards are unharmed but temporarily incapacitated. As for access, well, that's the interesting thing about human technology. We don't try to break down your doors. We simply make you open them for us.
She gestured to something off-screen, and the display changed to show a tactical overview of the entire system. Every ship, every defense platform, every military installation was marked with symbols that made the delegates gasp in recognition. Green markers indicated systems under human control.
There were no red markers showing council control remaining.
As of dawn this morning, Sarah continued, every major military asset in this system is operating under human command. Your ships are flying patrol routes we've assigned them. Your weapons are targeting coordinates we've selected. Your communication systems are routing through our networks. The Drakmari military commander, a massive creature whose tentacles had begun writhing in agitation, spoke in a voice like grinding stone.
You lie. Our quantum encryption is unbreakable. Our systems are completely isolated from external intrusion.
Your quantum encryption assumed that attackers would try to break the encryption. Dr. Vasquez's voice joined the conversation as she appeared on the screen beside Sarah.
We didn't break it.
We simply convinced your systems that our commands were coming from authorized sources. Human viruses don't just attack, they adapt, they learn, they become part of the systems they infiltrate. To demonstrate, she activated a control sequence, and, on the display, a massive Zephyrian dreadnought began performing a complex series of maneuvers. Its crew was undoubtedly trying to regain control, but their own ship was ignoring their commands and responding only to human instructions. This is an act of war, the Nephilim delegate bubbled through his aquatic breathing apparatus.
You have violated every treaty governing interstellar relations. Sarah's expression remained calm, almost serene. Actually, we haven't fired a single shot. We haven't harmed a single individual. We haven't even technically invaded your territory, we were invited here as diplomatic guests, remember? The irony was devastating.
The Council had brought Earth's representatives to their most secure system, given them access to their stations and facilities, all while assuming that primitive humans could pose no possible threat. They had literally invited their own downfall. What do you want? The Vorthari delegate chimed, his crystalline form resonating with what his species considered fear.
If this is an extortion attempt, extortion?
Sarah interrupted, and, for the first time, genuine emotion entered her voice. Yesterday, you sat in judgment of my species.
You declared us unfit for galactic civilization. You laughed at us.
The display changed again, showing recorded footage from the previous day's session. The sound of alien laughter filled the chamber, the same laughter that had seemed so dismissive just hours ago now sounding hollow and foolish. You said humans were soft, Sarah continued, because we evolved on a gentle world.
You said we lacked the warrior spirit necessary for council membership.
You suggested we return in 1,000 years, when we had perhaps matured sufficiently to deserve your consideration. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the terrified delegates. What you fail to understand is that Earth's gentleness was not our weakness, it was our choice. Humans have fought wars that would horrify your species.
We've created weapons that could sterilize entire star systems.
We've developed strategies so ruthless that we banned their use among ourselves. The display showed a montage of images from Earth's history, nuclear explosions, chemical warfare, genetic weapons, cyber attacks that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. The delegates watched in growing horror as they realized the true scope of human capacity for destruction. The peace you observed on Earth wasn't the product of weakness, Sarah explained. It was the product of strength so terrible that we chose to restrain it rather than use it. We learned to solve our conflicts through diplomacy not because we couldn't fight, but because we had become too good at it. Admiral Torres appeared on the screen, his weathered face grave with the weight of command. For the past 8 hours, human forces have demonstrated complete superiority over every military system in this region. We have taken control of your defenses without firing a shot, disabled your communications without damaging your equipment, and neutralized your response capabilities without harming a single individual. This is what restraint looks like when wielded by a warrior species, he continued. We could have destroyed everything you've built. Instead, we chose to simply prove that we could. The council chamber was silent except for the sound of various alien breathing systems and the soft hum of life support. The implications were sinking in. Humanity had just demonstrated technological and strategic superiority that rendered the entire council power structure obsolete, and they had done it without casualties. So what happens now? The Zephyrian ambassador asked, his earlier arrogance completely gone.
Sarah's diplomatic smile returned, but now it carried an edge that made several delegates step backward. Now we discuss Earth's membership application under more equitable circumstances. The display changed once more, showing a new organizational chart.
Instead of the traditional council hierarchy with its 47 member species, the structure now showed 48 members, with Earth occupying a position that was clearly not subordinate to anyone.
We're not asking to join your council anymore, Sarah explained.
We're informing you that the council now includes Earth as a founding member with full voting rights, veto power, and territorial sovereignty over any star systems we choose to claim. And, if we refuse, the Drakmarie commander rumbled.
Dr. Vasquez's voice carried a note of clinical detachment that was somehow more terrifying than any threat. Then, you'll discover what happens when humans stop exercising restraint.
Your ships will remain under our control, your communications will stay severed, and your entire civilization will find itself completely dependent on our goodwill for its continued existence.
But why would we want to do that? Sarah added, her tone brightening as if discussing pleasant vacation plans. Cooperation is so much more efficient than conquest.
We'd much rather have partners than subjects. The silence stretched for long minutes as the delegates absorbed the new reality. Everything they had known about galactic power structures had just been overturned by a species they had dismissed as primitives. The humans hadn't just demanded respect, they had made resistance impossible while simultaneously offering genuine partnership. Finally, the Vorthari delegate spoke, his crystalline form chiming with resignation.
What are your terms? Sarah's smile became genuinely warm for the first time since the crisis began. Simple. Equal representation, mutual respect, and recognition that strength comes in many forms. Some species conquer through brute force. Others achieve dominance through technological superiority.
Humans prefer to win through superior strategy. She gestured toward the viewing window, where the first rays of dawn were painting the station's hull in shades of gold and crimson. Yesterday, you laughed at Earth because you thought we were too peaceful to be dangerous. Today, you've learned that our peace was the most sophisticated weapon in the galaxy. The council chamber remained silent as the delegates contemplated their new reality. Outside, human-controlled ships continued their patrols, no longer hidden but moving openly through space as the rightful guardians of a system that had learned to respect Earth's quiet strength. The council had laughed at Earth's diplomatic overture. Dawn had brought silence, understanding, and the recognition that humanity's greatest weapon had never been violence, it had been the wisdom to choose when violence was unnecessary. From that day forward, when new species approached the council seeking membership, the standard response was no longer laughter. Instead, it was a careful, respectful evaluation of what each species might bring to the galactic community, because the council had learned that the most dangerous civilizations were often the ones that appeared the most peaceful. And, in the quiet corridors of the council station, human diplomats worked alongside alien colleagues, proving every day that true strength lay not in the capacity to destroy, but in the wisdom to build something better.